Hello, everybody. Welcome to the workshop for today. I'm not quite sharing my screen yet, so you're not seeing anything at this point. I just want to give another minute or so for folks to trickle in, and we'll get going in just about 1 minute. All right, looks like we have a few more people drop into the call, so that's great. Thank you all for joining today. My name is James Restivo, Crocainian Software, and what we're going to talk about today in this workshop is the list search web part that we have. So just a quick housekeeping, we do these workshops about once a month. We pick a particular part of Nitro that we want to dig into in more detail. If you have any suggestions or if there's anything you want to dig into in more detail that we haven't covered in a workshop or ones that you think need to be revisited, feel free to let us know in the comments or in the questions box. There is a questions box in the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar panel. Feel free to pop a question in there or comment in there at any point in the webinar. I'll check it periodically. If we can get to that question during the call today, we'll do that. Otherwise, we can follow up with you afterwards if we need to. But feel free at any point in time to pop a question in there into that questions box and let us know if it's something's confusing. Maybe I go through something too quickly, or you want to dig into it in a little more detail. All of that's fine. So we usually these workshops are usually fairly quick. We don't go the full hour. We do you just want to kind of focus in on the one topic that we're talking about, and then give you some quick tips and quick information to go back and use that. Starting today, right after the webinar, you can go and start using this information. So I'll talk about upcoming workshops at the end of this call. Don't want to waste your time. So I'm just going to dig right into it and talk about the list search web part, which I think is a really great, maybe underutilized, but also a really great tool that we have in our application for doing really complex querying of the data in your database, in your SharePoint list. And in this case, we're going to be talking about it in the context of our IT premium, which, if you've been to these before, I usually hammer on that one pretty well. But we have a lot of data in there in our demo site, so it works really well for this purpose. So what we're going to do is talk about a couple things. We'll talk about how to set up the search web part, how to add it to your classic and modern pages. So if you're in on-prem or using classic for Office 365, we'll talk about that. And then if you're using modern for Office 365, I'll talk about how to add that web part to that page as well. Fairly straightforward. The settings are the same. The web part configurations are pretty much the same. So I'm going to go at it from the classic interface to start, and I'll just touch on how to add it to the modern interface, but everything's going to be the same for both. So to start, you'll see on here we have our staff workspace page where we're adding, we have some list views. We have a few things here. We had a webinar a couple weeks ago about that, creating dashboards and things like that. So you can see how to add these things to the page. We're going to focus in on the staff one, this ticket search one. And you can see right at the top, you have quickly, you can enter a search term. It's going to focus the search on your list that you define in the settings. In this case, it's our IT tickets list. So we do something like hardware. We'll do a search, and it's going to pull back all the tickets that are out there that have hardware in somewhere in there. So that's real simple search. Kind of start out. You could do this with a SharePoint search as well. I don't know if it targets it to the list. Well, it does from the list view. You can target to the list specifically, but this is another way to do that on this page. But let's say you want to get more detailed. You want to get more refined information here. One way to do that is through list views in SharePoint, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But what we find with the list views is that there is some drawbacks. There are some drawbacks. The building complex conditions is not really easy in list views. Also, if you want to export that information to Excel, you have to create a new list view. through your list settings or through the view interface. Now it becomes a view in your list, and it just clogs up how many views you have going on in your list. This, you can actually kind of do the same thing in the sense of having these saved filters. I'll dig into those in more detail, but it gives you the same kind of concept where you're saving a view and referring to it as needed. And then, you can see right here, there's an export to Excel option. So you can take that return of that search and export it out to Excel. And then you can manipulate the data beyond that if you need to, like for reporting or whatever the case may be. But I've added in some filters here to start. And I'm going to focus on this hardware request. So, search for hardware. So I got all the hardware tickets that are in there. That's very simple. You can do that with standard SharePoint search. Hardware requests, you can kind of do the same thing. You can go in there and search for all the hardware requests. In this case, we're looking specifically in this category list, and I'll show you in the when we look at the advanced filter what that looks like. You can see there's the category, and we're saying the category equals, and so he's pulling this lookup ID, but kind of this cool feature of the list search is you have this ellipsis over here, and if it's a drop down, if it's a choice column, or if it's a lookup column, you can actually go and choose it from here. It's going to give you all the options, and then you choose which one you want. Let's say hardware request, hit OK. It's going to show like this in here, but that's just gives it, that's just kind of like how it shows on here. But you can always double check that and say, okay, I want to make sure it's doing hardware request. Go and select that, hit OK. You can update your filter, save it, and give it a name. So in this case, I gave it a name as hardware requests, and then you hit search, and it gives you that return. Now, let's take it a step further. Let's say you want to only return open hardware requests. So we have that view here, and you can see if we go into, you see that it doesn't show any of the close. The close value shouldn't be over here, won't be over here anymore. And if we go into the filter settings for this one, you see it's a little more complicated. And so this is where you start branching out from what you can do in the list views and where the list search comes into play as being the go-to option for getting back the information. So, and feel free to contradict me in the questions and comments if I'm saying something incorrect here. But doing building out a filter like this in the SharePoint list view itself, I don't know how to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it because what we're doing here is saying, again, category equals hardware request, our lookup ID 3, and then we're saying only return these statuses. Only tell me, only return the tickets that are in progress, unassigned, or assigned. And the reason I'm doing it this way is that we're also actually excluding another status. If you go into, let me delete that. If you go into the request status here, again, you have that drop down. You'll see we're actually excluding this waiting on response and this closed. So, you could do it the other way around where you say it doesn't equal, in progress or I'm sorry, it doesn't equal waiting on response and doesn't equal closed. Either way you do, it's fine, but it just gives you a way to really refine it and say, only bring back this subset of information that I need to see. And if you try to do this on a view in a standard SharePoint view, so if I went over here, I kind of did the same thing, category equals hardware request. But one of the limitations is you have to make sure you have this exactly right. If there's a extra space at the end, this isn't going to work. If there's some character that's missing or that you have the capitalization incorrect, this is not going to work. But furthermore, we're doing and or conditions here. So if we look back at this, we have the all, which is our and. So this condition and this condition have to be true to return the item. But we're also doing an or conditional in here. We're saying if it's this, or this, or this. If we do the view over here, we have this, and we're going to do and then we want to do request status is or. But you know what happens when I go and hit OK over here? It doesn't return the same information. So I'm saying it wrong, or I don't know how to do those or conditions, or SharePoint just doesn't have the ability to do it. So that's one of the limitations I find with the SharePoint list views versus what you can build out with the with this tool here. So just notice there's a question popped in. Are these filters saved per user? That's a great question. You can set them up in the settings. I'll go over this in a little more detail, but you can have someone who configures these for all users. But if you're the person who's coming in and doing this, yeah, you can have it personalized to your search only. So let me show that. So let's say I want to create a new one. We're just going to create a new one here where category, sorry, a little further up, category equals hardware. In this case, we're going to do problem instead. You can see it's going to be ID 4. Now, if I save this filter, so the save filter down here option. So I now have the option to save it as showing it for all users or just for myself. So I can do hardware problem. I could decide to show it to everyone, or I could just have it for me. And so as someone else coming in here should not be able to see that hardware problem filter because I didn't show it to all users. I just had it for myself. And then if we do a search, you'll see that it pulls back the hardware problem tickets rather than the hardware request tickets. So yeah, you can do that. You can have it limited to just who the logged in user is. Okay, so then the so you can get even more complex where you want to say, okay, let's show me just the ones that are hardware requests that are open that are assigned to Pavan. And you can see that's what we're getting here. Assigned staff equals Pavan, hardware request, and they're all request status of open. In this case, they'll happen to be assigned. And then you can even do date filtering in here if you wanted to do hardware request last 6 months. You're just going to do the hardware request and the created is greater than, you can use this offset days function where it's actually going to go back and subtract from today 180 days and show you just the tickets created in that time frame. So that's why you can do date filtering in here, similar to what you can do with the list views. Is you're not doing the today function, but it's going to do the same thing. So I'm going to do search, and it's going to pull back all hardware requests that are open in the last 6 months, whether they're assigned or closed or whatever the case may be. So all of that, create all those. You can export them all to Excel. One of the differences between this export to Excel and the export to Excel in SharePoint is you'll notice this comes across as an XLSX file, standard Outlook. Outlook file. No, standard Excel file, and the SharePoint export to Excel is going to bring back an IQI query file. It's a little different. I mean, you can manage both. They work the same. You can copy the data, move it into a plain text or whatever you want. But this just directly exports it as an XLSX. So it's just a note of difference there, and when you're getting the data from the list search versus when you're getting it from the standard SharePoint list view. Okay. So let's see. I think we had another question pop in. Let me just take a quick peek at our questions box. Yeah, so filtering allow complex date calculation. You can see we can do the offset there where you can do the offset of days is -180. We could also do a group here. Instead of using this condition, we can say, okay, add a group where the created date is greater than or equal to, we can do offset days -180. Then we can also then we can add a condition where it's also going to be less than today. You do created less than or equal to, or it could be less than equal to today. So it gives you a date range you can work from. So you can even do, offset days, -150, and that's going to give you ones created in the 30-day time frame about 6 months ago. So you could do that kind of complex calculation like that. If it needs to be a little more complex than that, then let us know what you're kind of looking for, and we can dig into it. But you can use those, and that's really a great thing about this condition builder is you can build out these any's, you can group them together. It gives you a lot of flexibility in building out these queries. So we got another question in there about the 5,000 threshold error, which you see you got that list view threshold in SharePoint which comes up quite a bit when you're using large lists. That is coming from the view itself. So I think within the search web part itself, what we're doing is limiting the views that are searchable. So if you have a view that is returning more than 5,000 items, it probably would not work. So let me dig into that a little bit in the settings. So you can see what we're doing here. There's things that we can configure in this search web part. What's the title? What's the input text? So you can actually change what is shown in this box here. We can actually use this to search another site within the site collection. It doesn't, or another site I think in the site collection, or even across site collections, I think we can do that. In this case, we're just looking at a list within this particular site. We're choosing our list. You can actually choose multiple lists. It's going to search one at a time, but allow you to toggle between the two. So if you want to do tickets and archive tickets, if you're doing an archival situation, you can decide to do this where you can search the tickets list, then you can search the archive tickets list. We'll allow view selection. I'll show you what that looks like when I save the settings. There's the advanced function here where you have this enable the advanced search. You could disable that. Let's say you want to present a page to your users where you don't want them to have that power to go in and add whatever conditions they want to search for. You can turn that off. So now you're limiting what they can do with this. So if it's a limited use case, a limited group of users that you want to have looking at it, you can do that. And we'll go through all these in great detail. We have a lot of this in our manual, or if you want to dig into these questions specifically, let me know. Let's kind of go over the high level of some of the stuff here for enabling this SharePoint search. There's this whole concept of natural language processing. This allows you to kind of do, instead of directly searching for the term as it's written, it could search for a term that's similar to that. Say someone's searching for printer is broken, but you have an article, let's say it's a KB search kind of situation. Printer is broken, but you have an article that says when your printer is not working. So natural language processing would be able to understand that when someone writes in printer is broken, they also mean to return printer is not working. Otherwise, if printer is not working doesn't have the word broken in it, that article is not going to be returned. So that's where natural language processing comes into play. It will allow that printer is not working article to be returned when someone searches for printer is broken. But that's something you set up through, there's like a Lewis app. It's a Microsoft service that you can set up, and you give it a region, an application key, and you would get all of that information from that Lewis service. Again, if you wanted to hide that export to Excel button instead of showing it, you could do that. There's an option here for that. And then you can extend the settings with using JSON if you wanted to do that, kind of change how the look and feel or what it does. And then theme, so we can actually give it a color. Right out of the box, if you see it's just a standard kind of white color here that we're not doing much with. Actually, here, let me go and reconfigure the setting because I was going to save this. Archive tickets. All right. And then we'll allow view selection. And the cool thing, I like the gradients personally. These are my favorite. I like how this looks on the page. And as long as you get a color scheme that looks nice with what you're doing, it gives you a way to kind of really augment, kind of highlight, or give it, make it pop on the page in a way. So there's things you can kind of play around with the settings, where the opacity is and all that. But this makes it really simple, and this is true across anywhere you see this gradient generator. You're going to see this in a number of places in our applications. You just create the gradient you want. Actually, I hate that color. I'm sorry. I'm going to pick something else. I don't like that one. Let's do this. Maybe give it a little more like, I don't know, kind of play around with it like that. Just copy. It's just going to copy it to your clipboard. Come back over here. Paste. Done. That's it. You got a gradient. All right, so this is going to change a little bit because I made it for looking across two lists instead of just one. And you see you have this drop down over here, so you can search your tickets list or your archives list. You can select the view. Now you got that view selection here. And then you can enter your search term, and then you can also come over here and play around with your filters as needed. Let me see, I think for archive tickets, yeah, it's not going to have. So yeah, you can recreate those filters for both ones. It's not going to carry through, but that's those filters are fairly straightforward to recreate. You just take a screenshot, and they're so easy to put together. I mean, it's like, got to select a view here, do all items, whatever. So you just do, again, category equals hardware request. Okay, we can add a condition, or we can add a group. Actually, I like adding groups. where you can do multiple things, matching, we do request status, and whatever it might be, close. If they're archived, it's probably all going to be closed anyway. So I don't know if you really need to do that, but you could do actually probably better use cases if you wanted to do where assign staff equals James Restivo, and then a condition where maybe assign staff equals on Kumar, that kind of stuff. And then hit search, and probably not going to bring back anything. I don't think we're archiving on this demo site, but you get the idea. You can build out those filters. I didn't save it, but you could save it, and then it's available for use later on. Now, all right, so feel free to pop in any questions about the functionality of the tool. What I'm going to dig into now is how to add it to the page. It's really easy. So if you have any questions about the functionality or how the settings works, let me know. I'll get to those questions in just a moment. But to add this to a page, okay, so this is being done through our apps, NITRO Studio apps. You can go to the list search tool in the apps page. This is on our, this happens to be on our IT Premium's demo site. Go to list search. You can see I already have it open over here. I'll just open it again, no big deal. And you select your document from the library. To know where to add this, it's really easy. You just go to your page where you want it to be added. You can see you're in the IT Premium site. It's in the Workspaces library. And then also another folder called Ticket, but I don't think you necessarily need that because you can go here, go to your document library of workspaces, and it's going to bring back all the workspaces that you have within that that particular folder. So you can choose which one you want. Our staff workspace happens to come up right at the top. And you can decide where to add it to your page. So as a classic web part page, this particular layout has a header, left column, middle column, so you can choose where to put it on the page. The zoned index will tell you whether it's added to the top of the page or top of that section or lower down in that section. So we're just going to add it to the header, and then give it some text. Ticket search 2 because we already have one on there. We go back to your workspace where you added it. Refresh and it should be there. You see there it is, and then you have to go and configure the settings. So unlike some of our other web parts, both in the classic and the modern UI, for the list search web part, all the settings are configured over here on this right-hand side. And I might need to move your GoToWebinar window if you're not seeing it, but on the far right-hand side of the screen, there's a little drop-down. It's got a wrench and it's got an X. The X will delete the web part, which, it's fine. There's no data stored in that web part except for maybe the filters. But then the wrench will bring you to that page where we're looking at, okay, what lists do we want to search? Tickets, all that information. What views do we want to search? What columns? You could actually limit it to certain columns to search, and then you have all your settings right there on the page itself. So our other web parts, you typically have to go to that app itself, like the tiles and dials. You configure a whole tiles and dials interface. Reports, you go to the reporting tool and create your reports. List search is different in that you actually can configure all your list search settings right on the page itself. Again, that's true in classic and modern. So classic, adding it to a classic page, you got to go through the web part over here, get it added. It's pretty straightforward. Similar to most of our modern web parts, you go to the modern page directly where you want to add that web part. Make sure you have this this string here, question mark CCS mode equals 1. Some of our branding elements might hide the edit button on the form on the page. If you add this into it, it'll bring that edit form or edit button onto the page. So just make sure you add that if you don't see the edit button on your modern page. Go to the plus on where we want to add it. So again, being a modern page, it's pretty much you can put it wherever you want. And just do a search for it, list search. There it is. Add it. See, again, it's all done through the settings. You can actually publish it as is. Then we come in here to our settings. So a slight difference is that you don't have the delete option in the modern page, but that's simply because you can go to edit and hit delete very easily if you want to remove it from your page. But you'll see that the settings for the modern, it's all going to be exactly the same as what you're seeing for the classic. So everything you saw for what we've been doing so far should carry through to what you're looking at. You have, you know, the advanced section is going to look exactly the same. Theme section will be exactly the same. So you can play around with all that and get some complex queries for getting the data. So it's great, you know, you can have the queries, you can pull it back anytime you want. Let's see, tickets, monthly, daily. You want to pull in a certain piece of information. Show me all my open hardware requests on a monthly basis. Get that, export to Excel. Now you have something you can share with your superiors or whoever needs to see that information. So things like that. So yeah, so we've got a question here. Let me see. We got a question about how do you change the color of the search web part title bar? So you're talking about this section right here, I imagine. That would have to be done through CSS on the page itself, I believe, and that can be handled, I think, through either the branding app that we have, which will impact the color on the top, although I don't see. You know, let me dig into that one and get back to you. That's a great question. I think it can be handled through CSS, but I'll have to check to see what we can do there, if it's something that can be done through either branding or if it can be done through other means. So I will get into that and get back to you. All right. Let's see. If there's any other questions, feel free to pop them into the box. I'll be happy to answer them. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. Pretty, you know, I think it's a great tool. It gives you a lot of options. It's simple but powerful, which is what I like. It's simple. Add it to the page, very simple. Start searching, very simple concept. Then you can start adding your complex queries and just have them as a drop down here where you can make them available to people as needed. And just simple matter of clicking it, pulls it back, and you see it comes back very quickly versus some SharePoint list views might take a little while to return all the data. So there's a lot of advantages to using the list search web part versus the list views. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in our workshops in the future. Again, if you have any ideas about what to talk about, feel free to let us know what you want to look at. On our next workshop in September, we're going to talk a little bit about our Nitro Portals. We've released some new versions of the portal recently, which give you a little more configurability. So we're going to talk about how that evolution has been going on and why you might want to choose a power portal versus a more configurable portal. Just talk about some of those different things. And then we're going to go into in October a deeper dive into Nitro Forms. I think it's something we do talk about a fair amount, but I'm going to dig into some of the more nitty gritty edge features that are there that you might not use on a day-to-day basis, just to give you some sense of what's possible, what you can do with it. Just more, take it to the next level in the sense of you can do, let's say you can do column permissions, tab permissions, that's all great, but let's take it a step further and see what more we can do with it. So great. So I think that's good for now. Again, any questions, comments, follow-up emails, let me know. We will also be putting this up on our website. You can always go to our Nitro Workshops page on crowcanyon.com. If you go to NITRO Studio and go to support and training, and you'll see workshops is right here. You can see the ones that, the page I was just on, and then you can also see previous ones that we've done going back. I think we've been doing these about a year now. So we have about a dozen of them out there, maybe a couple more than that. And you can go back and take a look at what we've done in the past. But yeah, I hope you found this helpful today to go through this in some detail with a list search. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, let me know. We're happy to field them. Appreciate everyone's time today, and I'll let you get back the balance of the hour so they can start going and playing with the list search web part. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.